Right, watch out, welcome back. Okay, today I want to change the brake fluid on the Harley Davidson. It's a very simple task, but there are three things which I'd like you to know about it that will help you when you come to do yours. Yes, we've done brake fluid change videos before, clutch fluid on the Suzuki Bandit, etc. And they've been very, very popular, all up around the 60, 70,000 hit mark, which shows you need that kind of information. So the reason I'm going to change this, although it's an absolutely stunningly immaculate bike that has never had its backside wiped, it's absolutely lovely, never been wet. However, the brake fluid will deteriorate irrespective. Even if it sits in the showroom its whole life and never goes out, it will always deteriorate. It's hydroscopic, it absorbs moisture, and it must be changed. It deteriorates. It's like a cake going off in the cupboard. It's just only got so much life, and then you must eat it. Simple as that. Right, there are three things I want to show you. One is the leak that you invariably get around the top. We had lots of people email in the past and say, I've got this inevitable leak around here and it's really annoying, how can I get rid of it? I'll show you that that is a bit of a myth and how to avoid it. Second thing is how to measure the fluid level. And not to fill it up. There's a reason that you shouldn't just top it straight up when you replace the fluid. I'll tell you exactly why that is, so you set the correct level when you do it, because it's crucial and vital that you fill up the brake fluid in the reservoir to the correct level when you replace it. So how to do that, the simplest way and the reason why, and then how to pump the actual fluid through itself, which is the easiest part. Now, the reason I believe in why teaching you things, so you know why they happen, is because then you can make your own decisions. I think knowledge is power. If you know why something has to happen, you understand that it needs to be done, and you're more motivated to do it. Instead of monkey see, monkey do, it's monkey learn, monkey improve, and that's what's more important. So today, all we're going to do, change the brake fluid, take this cap off, show you what's inside. That's nasty stuff in there. Let's get stuck in. Right, before you do anything, cover up your paintwork. You don't want to get brake fluid on it. Modern brake fluids aren't quite so likely to damage your paintwork, but they will if you leave them on there. And it's that little tiny, you'll see when we're pumping this later on, sometimes you get a little spurt of fluid that sticks it. Stop sniggering.
Stop it.
Stop it. A little spurt of fluid splits at the top and you won't see it go. It will disappear somewhere and it just sits on the paintwork and festers. It's very important to make sure you cover up your paintwork and anything else you don't want damaged. Right, this cap's got to come off first. Just want to inspect what's inside. Now you've got two machine set screws on the top, and invariably you'll find they're normally chewed. And the fact that they're not chewed, and the fact they've never been touched, is a good indicator this cap has never been off since factory, which is 6 years. Now what I use, you can use what you like, but the best possible screwdriver you can, and I like these. It's a snap-on one, but you can get cheaper brands available. But it's these little detachable heads. I love them because they're razor accurate, they're a good fit, and they'll go in that screw and they won't mince it. And the trick is, get the screw in, make sure it's a completely good fit with no play, give it a tap in, press downwards as much as you can whilst you undo. And they're coming out nicely. There we are. First one. I'm just going to leave it in there because they don't have to come out. Press downwards. You normally sometimes get a little crack as it comes undone. Right, now I'll show you something else. Take 2 layers of kitchen paper, take this off. Come around, Pan, I'll show you this. Come on this side, around this side.
Okie doke. I'm on my way.
Ready? Right. Invariably, what people will do, they'll take this off with the diaphragm attached, and naturally, the first thing is you consider is you don't want to get any grit or contaminants on this. So the first thing people do is they turn it upside down, which is logical, isn't it? Is that logical, Pen?
It is, but I know the problem with it.
Yeah, don't be a know-it-all. Don't be a know-it-all, right. Basically, when you turn that upside down, that will cause a problem, which we'll come back to in greater depth later on. You'll see why. But I'll show you what happens, first of all. There is a diaphragm in place, first of all, a little rubber diaphragm. Okay. Underneath the diaphragm is a spacer cap. Now you can see already that even just a few seconds of turning this upside down, this fluid has already drained onto this cap in this area. And in the middle of here, I'm going to take the screws out completely. I can already feel fluid on my fingers. And it drains back, quite simply drains backwards. And get these screws out of the way, because I've got to get it all apart. Now they're not threaded into the plastic, but they're quite a tight fit. There we are. Let's remove those. And this cap Now you can see the amount of fluid that's all over the place already. And it's already drained into here, just by means of turning that on its back. Now, as you can see, we turn it on its back because we think we don't want to get any contaminants on the rubber diaphragm. And that's quite logical and quite correct. However, in the centre of that, can you see close, man? There's a minute hole. Can you see it in there? This little hole in the centre. There's a minute breather hole there. And here, if you come in, there's a little hole there.
Yep.
This end. And a little hole this end.
Yep.
And what happens, people put all this back together. They simply put one on top of the other, or you saw just now I had to take the screws out, and it's quite so they think, well, I don't need to take that out, that's okay, I'll leave the screws in there. Then they put the nice rubber diaphragm back on, then they put it back on the bike afterwards, unaware that up in the top of the cap there, come and have a look, they deposited this quantity of fluid, just a little bit of brake fluid, not much, just enough. Now, what that then does is it seeps out around this cap. And I've had at least half a dozen people email us and say, I've got this horrible leak down and it won't go away, and I wipe it off and I'm really worried and I'm tightening it down and it won't go. One guy, bless him, even went out to Harley and paid £1 million, as you'd imagine it costs, for a new diaphragm because he thought it was leaking. That's not the seal. That doesn't stop it leaking. It's turning it upside down on its arse like that then runs the fluid into that cap, and it comes out through those breather holes. As it capillaries out through the breather holes, it runs around the cap seal, this line here, and as it runs down, you think you've got a leak of your brake fluid, but you haven't. So there's your first lesson. That's the first of 3 things today. What you simply do, when you do that, you turn it that way up, put it face down with the diaphragm on a nice clean piece of kitchen paper. It won't get contaminated, and that will stop it. But before we put that back together, the easiest way about it is just to take it apart and dry it all with a cloth or kitchen paper. So when you put it back together, it's bone dry and it won't seep out. First lesson? Let's do the second one. Okay, with everything dried off, I want to show you the second thing. The second thing is when you replace your brake fluid, don't just go topping it up when you're done. There's a simple reason for this. And I've seen a few mistakes in the past where people have taken their bikes to garages not knowing what on earth to do. Because they've gone to replace brake pads, they've gone to force the pistons back into the calipers so they can get the thicker new brake pads in. They can't get them in, everything locks up, they get all sorts of dreadful problems. So this is the simplest reason or way to avoid that. Okay, it works like this. The brake pads themselves, they press on the disc. It's a friction material, so the friction material wears away. As it wears away, the brake pads get thinner. As that happens, in order for them to stay, the requisite 25 thou of gap from the disc, they have to be pushed out. So as the pad material wears down, the back plate of the pad has to come out and out and out and out until eventually it is knackered and it's worn out. And that is pushed out by the brake piston in the caliper, and the piston is pushed out by the fluid. So as your brake pads wear, more fluid is required down in the calipers. So as you wear the brakes out, more of the fluid from this reservoir goes down the hoses and down into the calipers and resides there. Then when you come later on, so as that level drops, you come to put your new pads in. You simply take the old pads out, you push the pistons back so you can get the fatter ones back in, the new fresh ones. As you push them back, naturally the fluid goes back up the hoses and back into the reservoir. So it's obvious that the quantity of fuel in the reservoir must be constant. You mustn't go thinking, well, that's hard, because I've seen people do this. The fluid's low, oh great, I'll just top it up. I've topped up my brake fluid. That's really clever, because then as soon as you put thick brake pads back in, you're going to have too much fluid in there. You're going to try and push those pistons back, and it isn't going to work. So it's quite important, before you start this, we're going to basically take this old fluid out, we're going to bleed new fluid through, and in so doing, I eventually need to set the level before I put the caps and everything back on. It's very simple. And in order to do that, I need to check before I touch it, before I do anything with this level, is measure it. So before you start changing your brake fluid, the first thing you do before you touch that quantity of fuel is measure it. Find out how much is in there, because that's how much you need to remain in there when it's done. If it's a little low, if it's halfway down, that signifies that your pads are half worn out. So you probably need to check your pads. Pads are okay. If they're half worn and you've got 3 mil of pad left, that may be fine. But don't go putting loads of fluid in because you've got thin pads. That's why your fluid is low. So if your fluid is low in the glass when you look, that's an indicator that your pads are wearing out. Very simple, isn't it? Now, as that wears, this little diaphragm doodah sits in the top here, that way around. So as it's got this affair on it, like that. And the idea of that, quite simply, is it retains the seal and it prevents the vacuum. Obviously, this is a flat surface around here. It doesn't have an air hole. The cap has an air hole for a reason. This goes on top, and this rubber edge lays against this, and it is sandwiched at a requisite amount to stop it leaking. It doesn't leak. If you get any in the cap, as I just said, it will just ooze out until it's gone. But normally this does not leak out into atmosphere. So when that cap's on and that amount drops due to your pads wearing out, these little concertina things will go down like that. And you'll find sometimes if you take this out, and for instance it's like that, you'll find that you've got an amount of fluid missing. And then when you push it back up, it comes up. So what it does, obviously, if that was a flat diaphragm, completely flat, the fluid wouldn't be able to descend, would it? It would simply stay. This would cause a vacuum and would suck upwards. So that's what this is for. So check it and make sure there are no holes in it or splits, or it's not perished, because if it is, it must be replaced. If that is split, you're going to have all sorts of problems. So make sure that's in good order. And we've measured this. Looking at this at the front, I can see there's a ridge, because Penny's all over the bench leaning on it. But there's a ridge and it's level with the top of this sight glass here. That's the level. But the top of that sight glass is just showing. So that's the level I'm going to fill up to. So let's get it changed. So that's the second thing. As your pads wear, also the other final thing is if your brake fluid is black. So I'll talk about the fluid itself very quickly. The fluid doesn't need to be black to be knackered. Okay, there are two things that happen to brake fluid. One, it absorbs moisture from the atmosphere through those air holes that I showed you. And secondly is that the rubber hoses, if you have original factory rubber hoses, as time goes on they deteriorate and the rubber on the inside perishes and dissolves, and the black rubber particles dissolve into the brake fluid. So black brake fluid indicates knackered hoses, not knackered fluid. But obviously once that fluid is black, just replace it anyway. So you don't have to have, when you look in your, but this fluid now is a nice honey colour, it's okay. Doesn't mean it's okay at all. This can have lots of moisture in it, and the reason we change it, just going to finally say this before we get involved in pumping it through, is this is hydroscopic. This fluid itself is hydroscopic, which simply means it absorbs moisture or water from the atmosphere. That water mixes completely with it at a molecular level, and the brake fluid that is in the calipers down at the back of the pistons that is adjacent to the disc that's rubbing with great friction gets extremely hot. And that extreme heat inside the calipers leads to micro bubbles of gas or steam forming as that water boils. And those little bubbles of steam are squashy. They are compressible. So it means that your brake itself becomes squashy and it starts to fade. And this is where we get the term brake fade. It means the fluid is knackered. You can literally talk about it, fluid being burnt. And it's a similar thing. It simply means you turned it all into water, and it's turned into steam, and it's just a horrible mess. It needs to be changed. That's why we change brake fluid every 2 years, because it absorbs water from the atmosphere. It's a perishable, so you must change it. Right, so I've got some. I went to the local Euro car parts shop. I'm not advertising for them because I paid for it. But how much was it, Pen?
£2.24.
500ml, £2.24. What's not to like? Who's not to change it? 500ml. Normally people say get tiny little bottles because you only use a little bit, then you have to throw the rest away. It is hydroscopic. So if you're going to open the cap like that, the minute you open it, that has broken the seal. If you break the seal, you have to throw that away when you finish with it. Because I'm not going to use this again. I'm going to use that much of it. I'm not going to use the rest. I'm not going to need any again for a long time. But at £2.24, £2.24, what's not to like? Use that, use what I need to use, and let's get rid of the other. And of course, dispose of it in a correct manner at the local recycling centre, not in your local tip or in the bin. Right, so let's get this open. Before I do anything else, this is a little thing that's quite important. We're going to bleed this through. Quite simply, I'm going to pump new fluid by pouring it in there and pump it through the system. You chase it through. You don't bleed the old system dry and then try and plumb the new one up. That's just a load of rubbish, and it's a load of work for nothing. Just all you need to do is bleed or chase the old fluid through with the new fluid. But there's no reason whatsoever to take this fluid and pump it through. We can literally absorb this out. So take your kitchen paper, get a big old carrier bag to drop it in, and using kitchen paper like that, absorb out that fluid. Just literally stick it in there, soak out as much as you can, rather than bleeding that through. Another piece. Now, as long as you don't touch the brake lever, you can empty this reservoir completely. Doesn't hurt it. So there's no reason, like I said, to bleed this or pump this through. So just soak it out. Mop it all out with kitchen paper. And it, whoops, like that. Get rid of that. There we are, that's dry now. Pretty much, doesn't have to be bone dry. But that's it. We've taken out, that's the old fluid. Just dispose of that sensibly in the bin. So you grab a cloth, wipe all that will dry, get that little bit of spillage off. So what I've done is taken out the old fluid. Pop in some new. And there we are. And all I'm going to do is just top it up with the new fluid, ready to pump through. Right, that's fresh. Looks the same colour as well. Okay, now what I'm going to do is jack the bike up and I'll show you the method, the actual technique of bleeding it through so you get no air in it whatsoever, and it just takes a couple of minutes. Let's get stuck in. Alright, that's topped up. We've got that through the sight glass. Got the bike up a little bit so we can see what we're doing. Lift the little rubber cap off the bleed valve. Now this will be called bleed valve, bleed nipple, call it whatever you like, that thing. And all this is, now you don't have to have any special equipment. This is an overflow pipe from a fuel tank. You know, the one that goes from under your tank down the back. And it is about, by the look of it, 4mm bore, something like that, and a piece of rubber hose. You don't need clear hose, it's not important for any chasing fluid through. And you need, for your Harley Davidson, a 5/16 ring spanner, okay? 5/16, I don't know if there's a metric equivalent, probably not. But that, so that you release the valve, you can open it and close it, simple as that. And then we put this on the end to give a good fit. It will fit nice and firm. Okay, simple as that. And then that in a jar. It's not going to fall over.
Not when it's full.
Not when it's full up. Well, it's not going to be completely full. So there's a technique to this, and many people have said, "Oh, I'm having loads of trouble." Lots of you who've watched our videos in the past have had loads of trouble actually getting a bleed, actually getting a good hydraulic lock and getting it to bleed through. When the system's empty, you will always get that. There really isn't much you can do. There are some techniques you can use, reverse bleeding and all sorts of things, but basically it's just a perseverance thing. But a standard solid bleed, which is where there is already fluid in the system, is as simple as this. Now, the technique, I'm just going to take that off because I want to give myself some turn. There we are, that's better. Now the technique is to use the brake lever, put some pressure on. If you just give that a good old squirt, you'll get a little spurt out the top and it starts going over things you don't want it to. So carefully put some pressure on. Right, we're not pumping it up. Put some pressure on the brakes with your hand. And whilst you hold that pressure on, then we open and close the bleed valve. So down here. And whilst we open and close the bleed valve, this will sink into the bar and allow it to sink in. So we open the valve, that sinks right into the bar, close the valve before you let the lever out. So the idea of this is, if you open the valve, then let the lever out, it will suck the fluid back up. If there's any air in this hose, it will suck the air in. So to keep the hydraulic lock, I'll show you once more, hold the valve at the top, or hold the lever in at the top, open while it descends, and close. Don't have to shut it tight, just enough to seal it. And then once that's locked off, then let that out. And that will allow more fluid to descend down. And you'll see through the sight glass you see there as the fluid drops. Now there's nothing, oops, coming out of there yet because it's still in the hose. Now you've got, on this bike I've got a twin caliper system. So as you're bleeding down, obviously I'm coming out the right hand caliper first. I always believe it's correct to bleed the closest caliper first, then the furthest caliper second. But I honestly don't think it matters that much, to be honest. I've tried it both ways. So as this, whoops, as I hold the pressure on and then close it off. Make sense, Ben?
Yep, I got it.
Open and close. And you don't have to open the valve right up, just enough to allow the brake lever to move. So that brake lever is locked, you can feel the pressure. Just open the bleed valve enough so the lever slides in against the bar, hold it in while you lock off. And then the action of letting that out sucks more fluid down, and it continues to go that way. And you can watch through the sight glass up here. Oops.
Nope.
You do get these little plops at the top. You can watch as the level of that brake fluid, can you see it? Just have a close look on the brake fluid. As I'm coming down, each one, you see it descend just a little bit more. You see it going down?
Slowly.
Very slowly. Now each pump of the lever is only putting, well, one pump full of fluid, which is probably that much of the hose. And then the next one is that much, and that much, and that much. And then of course you've got to fill the caliper with fresh clean fluid. So I would suggest pumping 2 reservoirs of clean fluid through each side before you actually have a problem or before you change it. Now this stuff, look, is coming out milky, can you see?
Yep.
There's a milky look to that rather than it being crystal clear like the stuff that's in there. So the stuff that's in the system and in the caliper will be dirtier than the stuff that's in this reservoir because this is the clean stuff at the top. So this is a great process. It's actually quite therapeutic. Just pumping the fluid down and take your time and work 2 reservoirs of fluid through each caliper, and that should be enough for a full change. So I'm going to get on with this. When that one's done, do another one, and then I'll move to the other side. Right, there we are, last one that side. So nip them up, don't lean on them, okay? They really don't take much pressure to strip the threads, and the threads that you'll strip will be the thread in the caliper, and it is a pain in the arse to get it helicoiled and get a bigger one put in. So just be very careful, look up the torque or the torque value in your manual and do up those brake bleed valves to the correct torque if you really need to. Honestly, you don't though, just gently, they're fine. Keep an eye on them for a day or so after you've been involved in anything like this, and just every now and again just put your finger on the bleed valve and just look at it the next morning, make sure. But I'll show you a little trick at the end to improve the brakes even more. Right, that's the nasty mucky stuff that came out. Still clean because it's a clean bike, so what's in there is effectively waterlogged, if you want a better term, brake fluid. So that is toast, it's no good for anything, and that will be disposed of in a proper way. But the next thing is to top this up and put the cap back on, and I'll show you quickly how to do the back. Okay, fresh quantity of fluid. I'll come around this side.
Yep.
Come around this side.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. You can see
Bumped
it.
into the camera.
Right, so we're topping up to the place where it was before we started, which is literally just above the top of this sight glass frame. There we are, that's it. That's where it was when we started, and it doesn't need to be any different. Now that's, I think, reasonably clear. That's a front brake fluid change. Cap back on, put the diaphragm on first. Now as you can see, it's not a particularly brilliant seal. It doesn't kind of overlap or anything. It just needs to lay in place. And on top of that is your spacer plate with the rim downwards, and that will fit neatly into the diaphragm. There we are. Just pops in neatly, and you'll see when you press this. Can you see on top? Can you see on top? You see this fluid already. Look, there's fluid, a residue of fluid around this lid that's already making a wet mark, a line around here. So you'll always get a little bit of residue, a little bit of bleed off when you put it all back together. And the simplest way to deal with it is just wipe it off, and for the first few days that you ride the bike, Personally, what I do is wrap a a toweling wristband around it for the first few days. You know, the sort of thing you wear, the tennis players wear. You'll sometimes see the sports bike boys keep them on the bike all the time. So a little toweling wristband in there will stop any brake fluid dripping away, because there will always be a little residue that's left over. And pop the screws back in, and that's the job done. There we are, in place. Now again, if you're concerned about how tight to do these things up, these are screws. Honestly, if I could demonstrate, I can't tell you the amount of inch-pounds that they should be, because I haven't looked it up and memorised it beforehand. But if I said fingers on the screwdriver, not a grip fist, just fingers, pressing down, that much, honestly, that's it. There's no need to lean on it, Monkey Boy. It doesn't need pressing down hard. That's not what seals it. The rubber is inside there, it lives in a captive track, and it will seal it. What comes off out around the outside as a residue, if anything, is purely that, a little residue. Just wipe it off. And that's it, front change. What do you reckon, Pen?
Easy.
How hard can it be? Let's do the back. Very quick, show you how the back works. Right, the rear presents just one problem. If you're somebody with no friends, then you're going to need one of these. The reason is that the caliper and the reservoir and the business end of the job to change the brake fluid for the rear of your Harley is on that side, but the brake pedal is on this side. So all you need is one of these. Put your brake lever up, this is cool, isn't it? And take your painting trestle decorator's person thing and just clamp it on the brake lever like that. That's what I do, to give you a handle. Hand brakes. You know the hand gear change? I have hand brakes, and all that does, it just gives you a handle. I can reach this from the other side and push that to operate the brake, so that I can effectively pump the...
Because I'm not helping you.
Because you're not helping much at all, are you? Camera girl. Right. Now this, on your Harley, let's have a look. Is that better? See what, do you swap sides? Let's come on that side. Right. Now your reservoir is there. You get a little plastic cap over the top of it. This is just a dress cap to keep it, I don't know, looking black and dark side. There's the actual reservoir. You've seen these on most bikes. Cap on top. Just the old-fashioned screw cap. Brilliant, love it, old school. Take it off, put it upside down, and there is the diaphragm, same as the front one. Take it off, and all I'm going to do is put that on a piece of paper that way up. Okay, so that's the same old situation. With this, I'm not going to make a mess because I don't want to spill any brake fluid on the engine here. So I'm just going to chase that through. There's not much of it in there anyway, but again, going to watch the level before I start because I want to retain that correct level. So when I look at the markers on the outside, it's at the highest level, just a tiny bit below the highest level on the marker. And all I'm going to do is put a little bit more in there because I'm going to pump it all through. So it's the same procedure. Undo the rubber cap from the bleed valve. Place your spanner or wrench on top of it in a place where it can be undone. They don't need to be that tight. And done back up. Here we are. So just practice that, rehearse that before you go anywhere. And then put on the little hose. Squeeze the hose on nice and tight so you don't get any spillage, like that. And put that in there where it's not going to go anywhere. And then it's a simple procedure, same as before.
You've
I'm
got
going to
your
be that side,
friendly
I've
arm.
turned my back to you. So come around that side, you can see the arm in action.
Look at that.
There we are. Come around this side.
I'm coming round this way.
Round. Just want to show you around this side. So that's the action, pumping the lever, which helps. And there is. Now that's not air in the system, that's air in the hose. Just being evacuated while I fill the bleed hose with fluid. But it's the same procedure. Push the brake lever, open, and when hold it pushed right down, then close it. And it will just pump the fluid through. Exactly the same on the rear. It's very easy. And obviously it's crucial to keep an eye on the reservoir to make sure that it doesn't run out. If the reservoir runs out, you pump air into the system, you've got to start again. Okay, there we are. I'm going to pump this through. I'm going to put about 3, I've got loads of fluid left. I can't do anything with it after, so I'm going to put a good 3 or 4 reservoirs of fluid through that caliper, not just to clean out the old fluid, but also to wash out any muck or anything that's got in there, kind of flush it through, as it were. I think it's worth it. I want some music and some flowers while this is going on.
We're going to leave you to it.
Right. You've really just got to feel for that, just gently. Doesn't need much. There it is. Finally, just top up to the correct level where it was. There it is. Diaphragm back on. Just inspect it for any grit, anything in there at all. Back on top. And the cap back on. Right, and that's the rear done as well. There we are. Right, 2 last things to do before we put the job to bed and call it done. What I've done in the end is pump the whole bottle through the bike. No reason to keep any of it. Can't use it again. And then it's exact quantity. There we go. Keep that stuff for the next time you do it. Up there, and that just goes to the recycled tip. Done. Right, this is something that will really improve your brakes. I'll show you. Okay, last job when you've done your brakes. That's instantly better, and oddly enough a load of air came out of that. Don't ask me where it came from. And this is definitely firmer. A little bit of air came out of the offside as well. Now there will still be micro bubbles, and I mean microscopic little nano bubbles of air that just generally get in because it's open to the atmosphere. So the little trick is pressurize the system for a period of time. Overnight is usually fine. You do that quite simply by bungeeing in the lever. Don't put it under such stupid pressure that you're going to break a seal or anything, but just like that. That's all I do. Just put a little bit of anything, tape it, whatever, bungee. Just bungee that in. Now, clamping that lever in pressurizes the system on the front. You can put a weight on the rear brake, but it doesn't work so much with the rear because it's a horizontal system. But the front brake system being a vertical system, meaning the hoses are going straight down, as you bungee that in, any tiny micro bubbles of air that are left in the system are squashed. They're squashed so they become tiny. This is exactly what happens with a bubble. If an air bubble in system is pressurized, the bubble itself shrinks. The pressure inside it increases. So as that pressure increases, but the surface area of the bubble decreases, it's more liable to move upwards. So as you pressurize that, any bubbles in the system become tinier than ever, and they are more buoyant because they're tinier, the pressure inside them's higher. And as they're more buoyant, they'll work their way up through the fluid to the reservoir. Whilst this is taped in, the valve inside the pump here is open. And as it's open, it means that these little air bubbles can come up and they can pass freely into the top of the reservoir, the airspace at the top, where they can just freely be out the way. So it means you get a far stronger system. And I challenge any of you who this doesn't make sense to go out to your bike, even if you haven't done this job, just go out to your bike, to your garage, your shed, your garden, wherever you keep your machine, and bungee your brake lever in, just to the sort of pressure you'd use when you're braking it. Don't go mental. And as soon as you pull it in, bungee it in overnight, come out the next morning, take this off, give it a few pumps, and you will notice that it is firmer and more rigid and stiffer because you've bungeed that in overnight. It works very, very well. And any of you already know that, already nodding. I can see you nodding at the back. She's nodding. Okay, there we are. It doesn't matter if you've got a Harley Davidson or a Hi-Use Sung. Brake fluid is brake fluid. It is finite, it's hydroscopic, it absorbs fluid, and it must be changed every 2 to 3 years, depending on where you live. Even in a very wet climate, perhaps every 12 months. What did that hurt? £2.24 for a pint of fluid, and then change the whole bike. And that's taken in real time about an hour. And that's it. Simple as that. Anything else, man?
Just pump your brakes up before you go riding.
Pump it up before you go and ride it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, take it, you're right safe. See you next time.